here, and we are having a look at the Cold War. We've started off with the three big powers, America, the Soviets, the UK, getting on kind of okay. They're fighting Hitler. To the outside world, they look like they're friends, they're working together. We've seen the kind of tensions that were existing between them, things they couldn't agree on. And last lesson, we looked at when the rest of the world caught on to the fact that things were not okay. So if you remember, we looked at the telegrams, we looked at Winston Churchill's speech that kind of stirred things up. So we're at a point now, everyone knows there's issues, particularly between America and the Soviets, and they're just going to get worse. So this lesson, we're going to look at something called the Truman Doctrine and the Marshall Plan. So by the end of the lesson, you'll be able to describe them, but you'll also be able to explain how it just adds to this tension that we already have going on. So we are going to do a knowledge recall quick quiz. So see what you can remember so far. So if you want to grab a pen and paper. So number one, the leaders and their countries that met 3 times during World War II to defeat Hitler. So 2 of the countries, their leaders changed. So you're looking for 5 names in total of the leaders and their countries. So who's meeting during the war? Number 2, where did they meet? So what were the 3 places? The conferences are named after the places. And in what years? What years were those conferences taking place? Number 3, Churchill's speech that stirs up all that trouble. What phrase did he use to refer to Soviet control of Eastern Europe? It's the name given to the speech. Number 4 is a tricky one. Who wrote telegrams? So the names of 2 men who wrote telegrams, who were they sending the telegram to? So they were sending them to the country they're from. What were those countries? And lastly, 3 satellite states of the USSR. So by satellite states, I mean like the buffer zones. So the countries they were using as a buffer. See if you can name 3 of them. So pause the video. Okay then, so here are the answers. So this is what we could have said. So number 1, the leaders and their countries that met 3 times during the war. For America, it's Roosevelt, who, if you remember, dies in 1945 and is replaced by his Vice President Truman. For the Soviets, it's Stalin. Stalin's the only leader that goes to all 3. And for Britain, we have Churchill, who loses the election to Clement Attlee, who then replaces him. So the places they meet, Tehran in 43, Yalta in 45, Potsdam in 45. And if you remember, we are going to remember this with the phrase, thank you, please, Tehran, Yalta and Potsdam. Churchill's speech referred to the Soviet control of Eastern Europe as like an iron curtain. So a strong divide between East and West. Number 4 was tricky. So it's Keenan is the American. So he's sending his telegram. If you want to refer to it as the long telegram, if you find that easier. And then for the Soviets, it's Novikov. And then for number 5, you could have had any 3 of Hungary, Poland, Czechoslovakia, which is its own country. It's one country at this point. East Germany, Romania, and Bulgaria. So yeah, have a look at how you did. If there was something that you weren't quite sure about, maybe go back, look over the lesson again, have a bit of a refresher. So we're going to start off with some source analysis. So we've got this cartoon which comes out right about this time. And the question is, what is the message of this cartoon? So by what we mean by that, what is the person who drew it trying to say? What point is he trying to make? So have a look at what they've drawn. Have a look at what it might symbolize. So just pause the video. So some of the things that you might have picked out, that bear, that represents the Soviets. So the bear is the symbol of Russia in the same way that lions are the symbol of England. And the bear to me looks kind of like he's smiling, but he's not supposed to be. He's supposed to be growling. He's supposed to be looking really big, really scary. He's got long claws. He's supposed to be aggressive. And we can see coming out from Russia, we can see those black lines. So they've chosen black as the color because in cartoons like this, it symbolizes evilness. So it's saying Russia is evil and it's spreading from Russia across Europe, Asia. And then right down the bottom, this little figure here represents America. So this is Uncle Sam. So anytime you see a man, he's got a hat that has the American flag on it, the stars and stripes. Uncle Sam represents America. And we can see here, he's been drawn very small. He's non-threatening. He's got his hands out in a kind of gesture of like, what's going on? So Russia, bear, scary. America is the innocent party in all this, just being like, I don't understand what's happening. So you can see that the artist is very biased. He's very pro-America. He's very anti the Soviets. So just to be fair and balanced, there was another cartoon that came out in kind of response to this. And so we can see Uncle Sam there. We can get a better look at what Uncle Sam looks like. And again, he's scowling and his fingers are like claws and he's reaching over. And we've got the black arrows pointing at a very cute little bear down there representing the Soviets. And what this cartoon does, which is really important, is just reminds us that in the Cold War, it's not straightforward. It's not as simple as there are good guys and there are bad guys. Both sides have reasons for feeling the way they do. And remember, we've kind of seen this already in the previous lessons. There have been times where one side's felt away, the other side's felt another, and we can see both sides of it. So the Cold War, both sides have their part to play, as we're going to see this lesson. So after World War II, lots of countries in Europe were in ruins. So I mean that partly literally. So there are whole cities that need to be rebuilt in Germany, in Russia, but also economically. So across Europe, there are a lot of countries that are incredibly poor. So communism looked attractive to poor people in these countries. So two questions for you. Number one, why might that be? Why might it be that communism is attractive to the poorer people? And how would America feel about that? So just pause the video and answer those questions. So the reason communism is attracted to the very poorest people is there's no homelessness and there's no unemployment. So if you're facing either of those things, communism is going to be a lifeline. It's going to help you out hugely. If you've got assets, so you've got your own home, anything that the government might take off you and give to someone else, communism's going to look less attractive. So how is America going to feel about this? They do not want to see a communist Europe. So they don't want a Europe that is dominated by communism. So they are really concerned after World War II that Europe is going to turn communist. So how Truman puts this into words, he writes what's called the Truman Doctrine. So we're going to come up against doctrines a few more times, but they are always quite simple once you get your head round doctrine. So doctrine, fancy name for something very straightforward, is just a policy. So it's what someone's planning to do. So a leader, in this case Truman, has an idea of how he's going to act going forward. He announces it in a speech. It's that simple. but it gets given the fancy name of doctrine. So Truman gives this speech, and we know it's not going to be diplomatic because it's from Truman. So I put a little quote for you there. So communism relies on terror and oppression, a controlled press and radio, so no freedom to print what you want, fixed elections, and the suppression of personal freedom, so no civil rights, civil liberties. So Truman, not trying to make any friends there. So he comes out and he says, communism, it's just awful. And he makes it clear that America will get actively involved if communism is spreading. So he's not going to go near countries that are already communist. So the Truman Doctrine is not about Eastern Europe. It's not about Poland or Hungary or countries that have already become communist. He's leaving those be. But any other countries, say in Western Europe, that look like they might fall to communism, America is going to intervene. This is what his speech is. And you can imagine how the Soviets received this. So the other side of the story, the Soviets, if a country wants to become communist, why can't it? So if France or Britain chooses for itself to become communist, why couldn't it? America's response because they hate communism. So then we get something called the Marshall Plan. So this is still from America. So 1947, American politician Marshall gets sent to Europe and he has a look at all the different countries, how they are, and he reports back that almost all of them are in danger of becoming communist. So he suggests $17 billion of aid should be given to get Europe's economy going. So free money. America will give money to all of these countries. It will help with unemployment, with homelessness, so people will be less eager to become communist. So this is sort of the practical bit of the Truman Doctrine. So the Truman Doctrine is Truman coming out and being like, we're going to stop countries becoming communist. The Marshall Plan is how they're going to go about doing that. So there are lots of examples, but one for you there. In Greece, there's a civil war, communists on one side, supporters of the Greek monarchy on the other, Greek government. Truman announced they're giving $400 million of aid to Greece and their neighbour Turkey. And the communists in Greece lose the civil war. So we're talking huge sums of money just been handed out now. And doesn't that just show how desperate America are for countries not to be communist? So the map shows you all of those countries receive Marshall aid. So all of those countries were in danger of becoming communist. And we can see Great Britain there in that dark red. We received some of the most Marshall aid. So Spain is a bit of an anomaly in that Spain is grey. But if you look at the other bits that are grey, mainly it's that Eastern Bloc. So it's those Eastern countries, Poland, Hungary, Romania, because they are already communist. So the Americans won't go after countries that are already communist, but they will with any country that looks like it might become communist. So the Soviets then respond, understandably. So they set up something called Cominform. So sometimes the name throws people a bit, but if you break it down, Com is for communist, Inform is for information. So communist information, Cominform. So every communist party in the satellite states had to attend these meetings, communist information meetings. And at the meetings, not surprisingly, they get given information. Policies were outlined, so the Soviets be like, this is what's going to happen. You had to follow them. So it wasn't like a meeting where it was like, well, what do you think? Give me some feedback. It was like, this is what is happening. You will do it. So Stalin does this because he knows there's a conference about Marshall aid. And he knows some satellite states, quite understandably, want the free money. So those satellite states, those buffer states, are looking at France and Britain and Greece and Turkey being given money for free by America and are like, but we want free money. So this is Stalin's way of pulling them back into line. So trade and other contact was to be cut off with any country not in common form. It was very frowned upon to trade or be involved in countries in the West. President Tito of Yugoslavia, so he is a communist. Yugoslavia is a communist country at this time. He actually stands up and argues with Stalin. He's like, I don't agree with what you're doing. They get kicked out of Cominform, Yugoslavia. And Tito is going to spend the rest of his life fending off assassination attempts from the Soviets, even though he's a fellow communist. And what this does, it really cements that division between the superpowers. The days of meeting up to have conferences together and make agreements together are over. So the last thing the Soviets do, and the last thing we're going to look at in this lesson, is something called Comic-Con. Nothing to do with the comic festival, but if that's how you want to remember it, you go for it. So Comic-Con, com is communist, econ is economy. So Stalin says to the satellite states, you are not having aid from America. He's like, you don't need Marshall aid or Marshall money, Marshall Plan. We'll give you money. So it's established in January 1949. Officially, it's about helping out the satellite states. The Soviets claim that there's going to be trade, there's going to be credit agreements, loans. Later, it's supposed to like industrial planning. We're going to help you work out what it is your industries are going to produce. Trade with America and Western Europe very much discouraged. But what it does, they're promised lovely things, but it's not going to happen. So the Soviets say this is what's going to happen, it's going to work beautifully. It doesn't. In reality, the Soviets get more from it than other states. So the example I've given you there, Poland had to sell coal to the Soviets at 1/10 of what they could have sold it for to other countries. So yes, there are trade deals going on, but they benefit the Soviets, not the satellite states. So both Comic-Con and Cominform aim to ensure the satellite states were free of control or influence from the USA. So last lesson we saw about how it became obvious to the world that they weren't getting on. These are the first sort of open steps that both sides take against each other. So openly having a go at each other, openly being aggressive towards each other, being negative towards each other. And it's just going to go on from here. It's about to get worse and worse.